welcome. Thank you all for coming out tonight to our Northgate Station 60% open house. Before I start, I'd like to introduce some folks here in the room tonight. So in the back we have Don Davis. He's our project director for the Northgate Link Extension. Ron Inlich, our deputy project director. In the back we have Deborah Ashland, our director of art and architecture. And next to her is Bob Nichols, who is our station design manager. We also have Jeff Munick, who is our community outreach supervisor in the back. And with him is Ellen Blair and Andrea Burnett as well. And we have Barbara Lukey, who is our art program manager here tonight as well. And then Rebecca Roush, who is our bicycle coordinator back in the back. So again, thank you for coming out. We're pretty excited tonight to talk about our 60% design for the Northgate Station. How many people were here for 30% back a year ago? Very good. Well, we've made some changes since then, so we're pretty excited about showing those to you. But before we get into the station, what I'd like to talk about here a little bit is just got to give you a basic rundown of the Link Light Rail system. Again, we have 16 stations, or 13 stations, excuse me. There's about 16 miles going from the SeaTac Airport up to Westlake. We also have our University Link line, which is under construction right now, and that's set to open in 2016. That will have two stations, one at Capitol Hill and the other one at Husky Stadium. ST2 funded extensions north to Linwood, east out to Overlake and Redmond, and then south into South King County. Now again, what we're going to focus on tonight is the Northgate Link extension. Now the last time when we were here, we were actually called Northlink. Since then, our board has provided a new naming system for us, so we are now considered Northgate Link Extension. So again, we are a 4.3 mile extension that runs from the University of Washington all the way up to Northgate. We're going to be in twin board tunnels for about 3.5 miles from the University of Washington till we come out of the ground here at the Maple Leaf Portal at about Northeast 94th Street. So again, this is where we come out of the ground. Then we'll have two underground stations, one at the U District and then one at Roosevelt. Then we will have the Northgate Station, which will be an elevated station just to the west of the Transit Center. We'll have open for service in 2021 for this line. This is our schedule. Where we are right now is we're here at 60% design. We're looking at 90% design to be happening about mid-2013. So, you know, keep an eye out for that. That'll be our next milestone that we're going to be looking at coming to you and looking at 90% design. The portal site at the Maple Leaf Portal, we had a construction open house in September. And again, the portal site preparation is going to be happening at the end of 2013. And then the portal tunneling activities will start at the end of 2014. For the Northgate Station, we're looking at starting construction in 2016, and that'll go through 2019. So this slide, I'm just going to give you a brief overview before I turn it over to David Hewitt of Hewitt Architects. He's going to run through the specific areas of the station design itself. But I just want to give you a brief overview of what we have here on the ground. So I'm going to orient you here. North is to the top. We have North Seattle Community College here, Northgate Transit Center, Northgate Mall, Thornton Place. The alignment is this blue line that goes from the bottom to the top of the page. This area here is the station. The area in yellow is the construction staging needs areas that we're going to need for not only the Northgate Station itself, but also for the North Portal, or the Maple Leaf Portal. And this area here is going to be the first area that you see that we take for the Maple Leaf Portal in late 2013. Now the station itself is elevated just on the west side of the existing transit center. We'll have two station entrances, one to the north, one to the south. We provide access into the mall, into the residential area, into businesses over here. And we also have a south entrance that also provides connection points into the transit center as well, and into the neighborhoods on the east side of First Avenue. We've included some bicycle parking that we'll show a little bit as we go through the design section of the presentation. And again, in 2030, we're estimating about 15,000 boardings a day at this station. So one of the things we heard after our 30% design from the bicycle community was they really wanted to incorporate the bikes access into the station a little bit better. So what we did is and you'll see in our station design, we've moved some of the bike facilities further to the north. At 30%, it was down at the south entry. Now we've moved it a little bit further north to 103rd to kind of get better access for the bicycles. And we've also been working with the Seattle Department of Transportation as they develop their bicycle master plan. And then I have identified a cycle track on First Avenue. So this splits from northeast 103rd north to Northgate. They call it a multi-use path. From northeast 103rd south to 92nd, it's a two-way cycle path. Now what we have done is we've moved our columns a little bit so that they will be able to come in and develop that cycle track and that multi-use path at a later date. So that's in their work, and that's going to be an SDOT project as they continue on in the future. King County Metro has also completed a feasibility study for a pedestrian bridge across I-5. Back in June, the Sound Transit Board committed some funding for this bridge. So we've got a commitment of $5 million towards that bridge. The City of Seattle has matched that $5 million. So there's a total of $10 million for a pedestrian bridge crossing I-5. Now King County and SDOT are currently working on developing that feasibility study a little further. They're taking it to the next step. What they're going to do is they're going to prepare what they call a type, size, and location study. Essentially what they're going to do is they're going to look at what this bridge may look like, kind of what type. Is it going to be a cable stay bridge? Is it going to be just a girder bridge or something different? Where it's going to land. There's a couple of different alternatives. In another slide, I'll show you some couple different alternatives that they're looking at. And then the location. Again, is it going to be here? Is it going to be up here? And how that might connect with our facility. But those are just some things that are in the works right now. And as we continue on with the design, those will be developed a little bit in more detail. And then we were also working on an access study for the Northgate station area. We're in coordination with King County and the City of Seattle. We're in the lead of that, and what we're doing is we're looking at other access improvements along with that $5 million that we committed to the bridge. We also committed another $5 million for other improvements, sidewalks, other bicycle improvements in the station area, and that's why we're doing this access study. So as we go along, this study is in the infancy stages right now. We're just doing some mapping and that type of thing. And as we go along, we're going to work closely with the city and the county to identify and prioritize some of these improvements that can happen in this area. So stay tuned. In early 2013, we should be coming out with some of those projects and some recommendations as we move forward. So this is another alignment slide. North is to the right, Interstate 5. Now here are those two alignments for the pedestrian bridge, potential alignments. So what we call the south alignment and the north alignment. And again, those are going to be developed a little bit further by King County and the City of Seattle. This is the north portal, or the Maple Leaf portal area. And again, this shows our alignment in greater detail. If you haven't had a chance, we've got a long roll plot here on this table that shows this area pretty well. And it also has some sections through it to kind of give you an idea of what that might look like. Now what David's going to talk about here in a little bit, he's going to get into more detail around this area up here at the Maple Leaf Portal. This is another transit power substation down here at the south end of the washed out parking lot, Northgate Station itself, and a little signal bungalow up here, up around Northeast 105th. So with that brief introduction, I'm going to turn it over to David Hewitt of Hewitt Architects. He's our station architect, and he's going to walk you through the design.
Okay, now give me this thing, please. So where's the... This year. Okay. Good evening. Before I begin, my name's up here and it says I'm the architect, but believe me, it takes a lot of people to do this kind of work. in many ways, and from engineers, all kinds of folks. But I'd like to just my staff is in the back. Would you please just raise your hand? These are the folks that have really been helping do this work. And so if you have any complaints tonight, pick out one of them and talk to them about it, because I'm not available. All right. This is really exciting, and just as a consideration, we're also privileged to be able to be on one of the teams that are looking further to the north to Linwood. So when a bunch of us are a little older, we'll be able to ride the train all the way from Linwood to the airport, and Northgate's going to be a really important stop along the way. So that's, something to think about and really look forward to. Now, I might see if I'm doing this right. No, that's not right. This is right. Okay. What I'm going to show you is complicated, and I know it's easy to get maybe not a little confused with some of this. The roll plot that was mentioned is certainly an important element. So where we are is in the extreme south end, and what I'm going to talk about first is how the train gets to the station. And it is in a tunnel as it comes along, and this is 92nd Street, I believe. And these dotted lines show where the tunnels are, and right here is an opening, and those are the tracks below. So up above that, now at grade, is an area where there was a power station and some ancillary buildings that serve the system, and that is surrounded by a metal screen wall that doesn't allow you to see all the stuff that's in there. And this is a emergency stair that's from the lower level where the tracks are up to safety. So should there be a problem. These vertical bars are really huge beams that go across and hold the walls apart so that the earth doesn't collapse the tunnel entry. And the train emerges out of this, and there's then a concrete wall, which we are also designing and treating that for its aesthetics, begin about this point, and they continue down the length of the system. And I'll show you an overall view in a moment, how that works. And there's an acoustical barrier on the inside of this, alongside the tracks, and then also the wall itself is an acoustical barrier. And this is a Google view, so ignore the kind of mush-like ground here, but this screen is really a screen. It looks like transparent, but it isn't. This protects the south end. This is that stairway that goes down to the tracks. These are those beams that hold the earth apart, and you can see that we're going now from underneath, out of the tunnel, through a portal, and now we're emerging up and coming out, and this is a fill. In other words, we're going from a depression to an elevation. So that's how the train really becomes more or less airborne on its tracks that begin right here, and they go over first, and they lead to the station, which is up in this zone. So what you're looking at is a cut in this zone and a fill in this zone. And those walls are treated. This is a concrete wall, and then these are what is called a gabion wall, which is kind of a beautiful wall made out of stones. And this depicts actually the coming out of that fill area. The train is on its overhead guideway now. These are columns that you can see dotted there. These straddle first, and the track opens up. It splits, and you can see that right here as it comes on over. And this is where it enters the site, and I'll come back to this site in a minute. At the other end, at the north end, the track, this is on the edge, on the very westerly edge of the Simon property where the mall is. The track terminates, and this shows the extension out to the future Linwood Link extension. And so you kind of get an idea of how the travel works. I'll go to an overall now, I think. I'll get it here in a minute. There we go. Maybe one. Here we go. Good. So the track entered the station, the block where the station is at the south end right here, and it runs past on this edge and on this edge, and then the track is a center platform that is located in this zone. Let me point out that Fred mentioned the study being done for the walkway over the freeway that will link this site to the college area. Here is one. This is the south location. This is the north location. The dotted line shows some sort of connection, either at grade or overhead, to the station area. What you're seeing then is the ground plane of the station, and it is the landscape portion here promote. This is a drop off along at the street for paratransit. This is the existing transit center, and right now in this first stage you will enter through a pedestrian plaza onto a space where you go up escalators to the mezzanine where you can get tickets. At the other end, you can ride your bicycle along 103rd. You can walk down that as well. Fred mentioned the track coming along first and then splitting and moving over to the west side. So bikes are going to be converging in this zone, and that's where we have the bicycle area. And this stairway is for that purpose. Anybody can use it, of course, but that's for the cyclists coming in to park their bikes in the storage below. And the north end of the station is higher. Remember, the Northgate Mall is about 20 feet above grade, and so that's how that works. Okay, a little clearer version of that. So here is the ground plane, escalator up, stairs up. This is the reason we formed this area is that this really creates a nice courtyard. And some of these elements shown on plan here are not yet developed, and we are a little unsure about how things are going to happen, but we're looking at probably retail and other functions along this edge. But nonetheless, for whatever happens, there's a courtyard here to serve the patrons, the users of the transit facility. Patron drop-off, paratransit drop-off, so you would filter through this zone into the court and then up to the mezzanine above. These are an emergency stairs. There's that bike cage I mentioned, and bike racks, bike lockers. It's pretty intense in here for bicycle accommodation, and these are simply ancillary spaces that serve the functioning of the station. The landscape, this is a rain garden for water runoff management, and there is the plant material and trees shown here are specifically chosen for that activity, and then we have more street tree scale trees on the edge and in the courtyard. This picks up some water runoff on the other side, and that will be restored. And this again shows the connection, the south end of the bridge where it might end and the north end. This section indicates, this is where what you see right now is at the very south end of the site. And you're seeing the tracks over, and this is a space, this is open to the sky. So this isn't connected. And that allows light and rain to come down into the rain garden as was depicted in the plan. And this sort of illustrates a tree that was part of the tree planting, but it gives you a sense of the scale and kind of the nature of the trees that Barbara Swift's office is designated. This is a very important image because it really describes how the station works. There's about a 4 foot, if you started at the extreme northeast corner of the site and you walk down to the southwest corner of the site, that's about a 5 foot change in grade. So there is there is some gradient on the site. It isn't just flat. And we're handling that with various ways, with steps and ramps. This is all totally ADA accessible. And you're seeing the north stairway that leads up from the bicycle cage at this point. Here's a paratransit drop-off. You come up onto this and up onto the mezzanine. The last time you saw this, we didn't have a mezzanine, and working together, we developed the idea that this was a more expeditious way of handling it. It opened up the ground plane, and we were able to put ticketing and some ancillary spaces, including restrooms, on the mezzanine level, and that's where they are in the background. Then you go up an escalator system to the platform. This is where you catch the train. And we felt that the site really had asymmetrical conditions. As you can imagine, there's a tremendous amount of noise from the I-5. So we have a glass wall at this point, which allows vision through, but buffers the noise. We're proposing a roof that is a tensile fabric roof. And the reason for that is that it is lightweight and it allows maximum light into the station. So that helps us with energy usage. It also is just the character of the space. Now what's a little bit unusual is that the east side of the station is covered by this low roof, so that we can take the water off of this side over outside the train. We take the water off here, and we don't have any water dripping on the users of the system as they get into the train. We found over time that wind screens in this zone are a little less effective than they are if they're up on the platform themselves. So that's how we base the idea of this. So the site is really asymmetrical. You got a lot of noise and pollution's coming from the highway here, and on this side you have the TOD, the future TOD, that's transit-oriented development. Housing and the like in the future. So that's why the station is an asymmetrical arrangement. What you see are now we're going up to the mezzanine, and you're seeing that here you come up the escalators, come up the stairs, there's ticketing, there's an elevator that takes you from grade or from the plaza up to the mezzanine. And then another elevator that takes you from the mezzanine to the platform. And the reason for that is the fare paid zone. This is the fare paid zone, and you need to get your ticket, and from now on you should have a ticket whenever you're on the platform. This is an emergency exit, ancillary spaces including restrooms, and then the platform bridges over, and then this is the north entry. And there is proposed in planning a parking garage on the Simon property that will accommodate the cars that are lost by the construction and the presence of the station. And that's right here. And so that parking garage is up on this level, and so there's a connection to the entry from there. And then also this leads over and connects to the mall itself. The stairs lead down to the lower level, where there's a crossing at grade. So you could get off a paratransit bus, come up, and be on the mall level at that point. What you're seeing here is that you begin your escalator ride at this point, and you land here. You begin your stair and escalator, the escalator is up, and the stair is in this location. So you land in this zone, in the middle of the station, and you'll see that there are no columns or any obstructions, and we think that's important for safety, the idea that you can see through, and we've got some illustrations on how that works in a minute. I want to point out too that the windscreen, the glass windscreen, runs along this edge of the platform. The roof itself then goes from this point to this point. So that's so the roof is slightly shorter than the windscreen, and then that's the length of the platform itself with emergency exit at both ends. A section that shows the north end, and this is the entry off of the Northgate Mall parking, and up you go in the elevator, or you come back up over your head here up to the platform via the escalator and stair. And you can get this sense of scale with that lighting, and those are the wires that propel the train, and there's the glass wind protection even out at this location. Of course, you've probably seen in the paper ideas about how the whole the neighborhood would be developed. You know, King County is working on this. This gives you a sense of, these are all building sites in the future. And this is the idea of the parking garage relating, this is on the upper level, so that this is now a transit street, and that buses would drop folks off in this zone, and they would come through and come up and use the station, either on this end or through the plaza. This illustrates the character of the station. Now remember, we're at 60%. That means we've got 40% to go. So a lot of the decisions we're still thinking about, but you get a sense of the open plaza, the mezzanine level, and then this is the vaulted roof form and the glass windscreen, and you can see the train approaching. The court yard idea here is where we have the escalator and stairs really form a couple of arms that reach out and kind of capture this courtyard space, and so that regardless of how this is developed, that this space will still be usable and a pleasant space for the patrons of the system. And you can see that the roof begins right about here and runs down to this end. This shows the tensile roof, and then we have some metal arches that define some areas for ventilation. The north entry is a very simple glass area that you walk into. You can see the view beyond. There's ticketing, and up you go. The view on the mezzanine, now what in this view, this couple has just come up the escalator, and they're heading for the escalators up to the platform. Elevators from the plaza below, ticketing. So you come up, ticket, go up the escalator. A view of the west half of the station, and you can see what we've done is at the openings for the escalators, we have a structural element. This keeps the roof stable in the north-south direction. And at that point, we've also glazed those walls. So there's wind protection in this entire area. And that gives you a sense of the lighted roof. Remember, this is all translucent. Light is coming in from all over. Looking from the north to the south, northwest, depicting the upper, this is the north ticketing area, up you go, and the bicycle cage beyond, and that's the bicycle, that's the north stair to the mezzanine. And we're really pleased to have some terrific artists, and Barbara Lukey is going to talk to you about that. That's the red is the pointer, yeah, and that guy makes it go forward. It's better if you pointed at that.
Hello, thank you. My name's Barbara Lukey, and I manage the art program for Sound Transit. Sound Transit, since they got started with building commuter rail and the bus system and the light rail to the airport, have involved the work and thinking of artists into all their major facilities, because we found that they are huge contributors to just making these more human-centric places that have landmarks, that have a great character, that reflects the neighborhood, and that contribute to the livable, walkable nature of the neighborhood. In this case, we looked at the station program and decided that the windscreen was going to be a great opportunity for an artist who had a very painterly aesthetic and skill level and their background, and that we wanted to make sure that the plaza area would become a community space, especially as we knew that it was going to be surrounded by coming transit-oriented development. So we worked with the Mayor's Office of Arts and Cultural Affairs and assembled a community panel, and although we did a national search, we ended up with 2 artists who not only are from the Northwest, they're from Northeast Seattle. So I want to invite up Marianne Peters, who is at the very beginning, both she and Chris are at the very beginning of their design process to get to know the neighborhood and to figure out where the best places to work within the project are. There we go. So Marianne was picked because of her great warmth and sophistication in her background, and we think she's going to be a very terrific addition to the station, and she will be talking to you about how she's getting started with this process.
Hi, thanks for letting me do this. It's true, I'm a painter. And so this opportunity for me is definitely a leap in terms of the materials that I'll be using, but not in the way that I think. At this point, basically all I can do is find out as much information as possible about the neighborhoods. I tend to try and find out what kind of hidden mysteries or histories might be in the neighborhoods and use them as threads to actual histories that people are familiar with. So the project I'm showing you here is at the University of Texas in San Antonio. And my job at this site was to focus on a center there that was named after a man who was a beloved Mexican-American activist and writer. His name was Tomas Rivera, and there are centers named after him because he was very instrumental in bringing huge populations that had been unable to be educated in Texas, particularly in San Antonio, to the University of Texas system. So what I did was I read his stories. He's famous for a story called Y no se lo traigo la tierra, which basically means, and the earth did not swallow him. And that story is noted for being a very honest discussion about what it's like to be in a migrant family. And while I was doing my research, this is where that will be similar for me here, I hope, I stumbled onto graphs of the monarch butterfly migrations from Mexico through Texas into the Midwest and back. And so I started looking at those migration routes being paralleled to the Mexican workers who were going from Mexico or from Texas into the Midwest and back. And I used the writings of Tomas Rivera, which is where those letterings are. I just lost my grammar, just like that. Which is a poem that he wrote called Ennui, and I, as often as possible, incorporated his writing into the work, including going to the University of California at Riverside, where he was the first Mexican-American chancellor of a major institution in America, and I got to go to his archives and scan his handwriting. So in sections of the site that you can't see on pillars and entryways, there are actual transcribing of his writing and these narratives that were really poignant to his stories. And then I used little pieces of the butterfly connection to move you through the space. Those digits that are alongside the words, those are actually taken from magnified butterfly wings. And I used them, I split them up, I made them be these I guess energizers that move you up and down the corridor of the hallway. This center is and now a very, very active center, and I think it is a good example of how I will be reliant upon the community. I have done all my public art projects on site. That will not happen in this case, but in the past that's been the case, and I use the narratives that people give me to give me some sort of touchstone that I wouldn't get otherwise. So I hope that as this project goes along, you'll feel comfortable talking to me, and no idea is a bad idea at this point. And I hope that I won't let you down, and I will have to end with this. This team that I'm working on, from the Hewitt team to Chris Brew to the Sound Transit team, these are all contemporaries that I have respect for, and I think give me respect in return. And I trust their judgment, and I trust that they will tell me when I have a really crummy idea and when I probably am onto something. And I think that's how I feel about the populations that will use the site as well. So thank you for having me.
So Mary Ann is going to be considering with the team where amongst the vast glazing system or healthy glazing system she's going to be putting that art next. And this is Chris Brew, who was picked because of his great sculptural ability. If you can probably see some of these around town at the University of Washington, down at the South Lake Union Center. And he's going to be focusing on creating a warmer plaza experience near the, there you go, Chris Brew.
That's what I'm doing. Thank you for coming out tonight. It's a privilege to be here. Which button's the red button? Oh, okay. Sorry. These are some old things I made. This one's at the University of Washington. This one's at Westlake and Denny. This is a Brightwater treatment plant. I don't anticipate doing anything similar to any of these things that you're seeing here. So some of you can feel relieved at that, I'm sure. As Mary Ann mentioned, we're really new to the project. We really haven't given it a heck of a lot of thought. So, but I can tell you a little bit about how I intend to approach it. I'll be having meetings in the next couple of weeks with Barbara Swift's office and David's team. And my approach to a project like this is to try to really construct a story or try to imagine through the story what it's going to feel like to see this station, and what it's going to feel like to see it repeatedly, and what it's going to look like from different aspects, and then typically I'll look closely at what the material vocabulary is. I'll work with Barbara about tree location and selection, work with David about material choices, and as that kind of story that I'm making up for myself about the experience of the station develops, I will start to look for things that are missing in the story, places where the narrative is could use some help, or could use something contrary, or could use something that I can do as a sculptor. And then I'll look for intersections between the needs as I see them and the restrictions and my interests as an artist. So it'll be kind of a triangulation between these 3 points. I'll generate a lot of ideas. Most of them I won't do anything with. And I won't regale anybody with at meetings like this with ideas that I'm not going to do anything with. I'll try to limit it to ideas that I will do something with. So that's kind of how it's going to go in terms of my process. At some point we'll have models and drawings to look at. They won't look nearly as slick as David's. They'll be so much better. They'll require more imagination on your part because they'll most likely be largely hand-drawn. So that's, I'm really looking forward to this project. I feel like it's a great privilege to be part of this. And I welcome your response and questions. I will also say quickly that my very first experience with public art was to serve on the design team for the Northgate transit center, park and ride down there. And I'm wondering if, it's been so long, that was 1987, 88, but I'm wondering if anybody in the room was one of those troublemakers from the community that made my life so miserable back then. Because we should talk. No, I'm surprised. They really figured there would be people that came back for this. But at any rate, thank you, and looking forward to the process.
Chris Brew. So this concludes the formal presentation from Sound Transit, and we'll be taking questions from the floor, and we'll be here, Fred, as long as they want, or is there a limit on how long we'll stay?
Thank you, Barbara. So like Barbara said, this concludes our presentation. Just the next steps, again, look for 90% open house mid-2013, as well as another construction open house for the Maple Leaf Portal early in 2013, as well as an update to the access study. So with that, we'd certainly like to open up the floor to any questions that you might have from any of us. And comments as well. Yes, sir.
I'm curious, could you review again why just the southbound or west rail is covered and the east side is open air?
They're both covered. Both sides are covered. If you go to the airport station, for instance, you'll find there's the center platform. You have covering on both edges right as you get into the train. That is the case here, but that's on the east. So you have a covering condition very similar to airport. On the west, because of the acoustics, and we felt it important to really seal that off because sound is a way of going everywhere. That's why we have the vertical glass, and then the roof really is a continuation of that. But in order to keep the scale of this down and we then used a different kind of form on the east. We think it's our impression is that it's a reaction to the conditions on the site. So because the east is a much different situation, particularly when the future development is coming in, there's going to be apartments and retail and open space and so on. So it's going to be a much more civilized kind of environment than the west.
Sorry, and on the north access point, is there still cover? It didn't look like there was on the train.
The platform is not totally covered. That's a policy with Sound Transit. It's just the expense of that goes beyond the reach. This has more covering than most. We're almost covered to the elevator. We have coverings at the elevator, but not the formal barrel vault. But it's we worry a lot about that because you're up in the air, you're subjected to wind. Rain, as you all know, comes from everywhere around here. So we have really been careful to find places where people can be in wherever the rain and wind is coming from until your train gets there. And there's, as you know, maybe noticed in the renderings, will be signs that tell you when the next train is, so you can kind of prepare yourself and be on alert.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Have there been studies done about noise levels as it comes out of the tunnel, comes up?
Yes, we have. We've our last construction open house, we did have a presentation on some of the noise levels. Yes, we did. Yeah. So we have.
What's the length of the tunnel portion?
The length of the tunnel portion from the University of Washington to the tunnel portal at 94th is about 3.5 miles. Yes, ma'am.
For those of us that didn't get to go to that last meeting, would you kind of tell us what the noise levels can be coming out of that portal? We already have one of those.
Okay, Jeff, can you expand on that question a little bit? She's asking about the noise from the last noise readings from the last presentation.
So last meeting, we did focus pretty extensively on the noise impacts. What we talked about is the fact that the station needs to do some nighttime construction. What we anticipate happening during the night is the movement of some trucks and the need to have emergency generators and fan equipment out of the tunnel. So it's not the type of noise you may be thinking of construction, which is, jackhammering and daytime construction noise. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head. There wasn't a huge increase over existing ambient noise that was measured. Partially is that because we extracted sound walls and the levels of ambient noise on the freeway. So, but we can certainly provide you with the presentation from that meeting is on our website. You can go and look at the actual graphics we presented.
And when it's actually built, how much the noise will that?
I'm not the right person to speak to that.
We're doing an operational noise study that's being under review right now, so we can certainly provide that information. If you can give us your contact information, we can get that for you.
We can bring it at future construction.
Absolutely, yes. Yes, sir.
Maybe I'm misunderstanding this, but I think that what I'm hearing is that it's less than completely certain that a pedestrian bridge will be built across Interstate 5. Can you talk about the level of confidence?
I can't because there's still a funding shortfall of anywhere between $6 to $8 million. So until that is identified, until King County and the City of Seattle do a little bit more work, and once that work's done, then there's probably some grant opportunities they're going to have to apply for. So I can't put a certainty on what that is at this point.
Yeah, obviously that makes all the difference in the world as to how well that station serves North Seattle Community College.
Absolutely. Yes, in the back.
With the exposure while waiting for the train, it seems most of the weather comes from the south around here, and I wonder if there wouldn't be some wind screens in the south to make the waiting on the platforms more tolerable.
You're correct. Can we go to a plan? Pardon me. Yeah, that's great. Can I borrow this? We have windscreens at this point, and at this point, these are windscreens that are glass, so that you can see who's behind them. There is glass along this edge, and this edge, here, and there, so that our feeling is that no matter what the conditions are, you'll find a place here out of the wind. Furthermore, the arched roof form, part of the reason that that form is that the wires run through it that power the train. Most of, or let's say half of that arch is enclosed at the ends. So it's not like a tunnel that comes through. Fred, where are you? Right here.
Yes.
So my understanding is the Planning Commission has provided quite a bit of input into the 60% design. And I was wondering what the process was to address those comments moving forward.
Take that one.
Yes, last week we presented, our design team presented this same design to what is called the Light Rail Review Panel, which has Design Commission, Planning Commission, Arts Commission members. They had lots of comments and questions about our design. We plan to take our design components back to them for further review. Did you have a specific question or a concern about that?
Well, I was curious, so it's going to go back to for review. Are there adjustments that are going to be made along that way? And what's the dialogue between that group and Sound Transit and Sound Transit community as that design changes?
Well, we are having dialogue with both members of that review panel and city staff fact, we had a meeting earlier this afternoon to talk about it. We're still trying to get clarity on some of their specific concerns and questions, but obviously the station will continue to be refined. We're at 60% design. We know that there are a lot more details and adjustments to the design that we're going to be working on. One of the major components we don't have available right now is how is public art going to be incorporated into this design. So you heard how the artists will approach that, but typically at 60% design, we would have some initial art concepts available, but we don't at this point, and that is one of the main focuses of future review. Other questions?
This train is left the station, historically speaking, but explain again why this thing has to go 2 stories up in the air and then come back down.
You said,
This thing goes 2 stories up in the air and then comes right back down on the other side, I'm sure. Why?
well, let me get to another graphic here. So again, we come out of the ground, right here, we're in a retained cut. We start our elevation here. Now this point here is pretty critical, because this is where Linwood Link,
Just skip the words instead of here or this, because us who cannot see the screen.
right at the terminus point, thank you, Jake, I'll make sure I do that. At the terminal point of the guideway, which is just south of Northeast 107th, that's kind of the critical point for the height of this elevated station. From that point north, that's where our Linwood Link section picks up. So that's kind of the point that drives the elevation all the way back to where we have our portal, and then to make sure that we have the proper guideway orientation as we come here for our speeds and operational facilities. So that's kind of how that drives the height of that station.
Saying the Linwood Link is going to be elevated there?
It'll be elevated here as it heads up, and then again, the alignment's in the environmental stages, and they're still working on the exact alignment for that and where it goes from that point.
So does that mean it can't be flat on the ground?
No, it can't.
I think that's what people
Yeah.
want. Why does it go up in the air and come back down again?
And there's just some right-of-way issues as well. And we can't end this crossing here at First Avenue. First Avenue is pretty busy, so we don't want to have an ag-grade crossing right there too. So we can elevate that over and cross over First Avenue. Yes, ma'am.
Do you know what the stops are for the lead? What's the next stop?
Don't know. They're in their environmental phase right now, so I don't think they have identified those stops at this point. Yes, ma'am.
I just have one question. We have substantial wind, and I know you're talking about putting glass up there, because if everybody's open, it kind of looks like a wind tunnel with wind coming down there, and that west side gets really strong wind sometimes. Is that glass going to be able to handle that?
Windows? You want?
Yes.
Yeah, they'll be able to handle those wind loads from that. That's, part of the structural design and the architectural design, yes. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm curious about the rain gardens. I'd like to hear a little bit more of what surface areas will feed that, and I'd also like to encourage the use of impervious pavements in the construction of that whole plaza area.
And I add that, would that be part of the Thornton Creek system at all, or would that feed into?
So Eric, do you want to talk about the rain gardens a little bit, or from a civil engineering point of view?
Okay, you want just from over here, that would be go front?
Yeah, I think if you,
You can take us to the plaza, maybe, you got one that zooms in more, I don't remember.
There you go.
That's probably a great picture right there. All right, can I use that? Good job right there. Okay, so the rain gardens, generally speaking, are in this area, right here. And the idea is that we'll take water from the plaza area and it'll go into the rain garden. And generally the way a rain garden works is The idea is the soil and the vegetation that's planted in the soil will take care of the majority of the runoff that occurs. You know, so when it rains, the water goes in there, the plants pick up the water. However, if it should rain really hard and it can't collect all the water, there's actually an underdrain system that runs along here as well. So when too much water occurs, rather than ponding and causing unfavorable conditions, that additional water is picked up and then routed off site. So the benefit is that under smaller events, nothing leaves the site. Under a large storm, there is an emergency overflow, so the water doesn't create a problem on site.
Does it hook into Thornton Creek?
I believe everything here eventually hooks into Thornton Creek. So if the water leaves the site, yes.
Show this section of west of First Avenue.
Pardon?
Show the creek location west of First Avenue.
Well, I believe the actual creek is off what's officially called the creek is over on this side. This is considered a tributary to the creek, so it's not actually, according to Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife, that is not truly the creek right there. But yes, yeah.
What's your plan for the vegetation of the site and the 5 and 10-year plan for maturity and replacement?
Could you ask that again?
Sure. What's your plan for the vegetation in the rain garden and the 5 and 10-year replacement of that?
Well, the vegetation that's proposed, we require that it be drought tolerant so that we don't have to water it.
Native species?
Yes. Yeah.
Conifers?
I don't know about that.
Wait. Yeah, could you repeat the question? I didn't hear all of it. Let me try to help with this. We're talking about plants?
Yeah.
Okay, could you repeat the question?
Sure. What are you planning on putting in there? And plants age, plants die. What are you going to do in 5 years, 10 years? Are you going to have larger trees, smaller trees?
Okay, so the plant selection is something that's been proposed, and again, we're at 60%, so folks have ideas on that. I don't have all the plants memorized, but in the rain garden area, we have to plant plants that work in those kind of conditions. But we do have a required list of plants that Eric was talking about, drought tolerant, drought adaptive plants really in the areas, because we don't want to have high maintenance areas for landscape. It's a lot of resources that would be a waste for that. So we're looking into all those things, and we will be maintaining that over time. So hopefully the right selected plant will do well, but if we do have die-off, then we'll need to make replacements to that as well.
So are you looking at something that's similar to what's in the Thornton Creek area where they have some more, trying to do the swale and the natural vegetation?
Yeah, because most of our native and adaptive plants are ones that are in the area and work well in wet conditions. But it depends on the area. Sometimes we have planting areas within concrete boundaries, and so of course we have to adjust because those aren't natural conditions. So native plants don't always work in those conditions. So yeah, Barbara Swift is great at developing the plant selection for that, and J.A. Brennan's working on the west side of First Avenue, and again, they're working on the areas with all the ponds and things. And I think Jim was here earlier. If you want to talk to him after we break from the big session, just a couple rows behind you to talk specific plants.
Conifers?
We have some conifers on the WashDOT side. Again, Jim would be a person to talk to. We don't have a lot of conifers in terms of trees, conifers. We don't have a lot of conifers in the pedestrian plaza area because we want the low plants to be, say, under 3 feet and the trees to be branching at about 7 or 8 feet, usually deciduous. So it's for security reasons and safety, sense of safety in there.
Yes, Jake.
I got here a little late, so sorry. So how is the bus interaction for the neighborhood served east-west? And will it stop right in front of the stair escalator elevator? Also, have you looked with trying to maybe work with the community, city, other nonprofits or whatever, or maybe grants on funding some other sidewalk in the area because it's really bad, it's not that great getting around the area.
Good question. On the, for the bus facilities, King County Metro obviously runs the buses, and What we're doing is we're working with them is to find out, the best way to operate the bus facility once we're there and when they redo their bus transit center. One of the things that we are looking at is having a patron drop-off or a paratransit stop in front of the station on the First Avenue side. That's what our plans show, somewhere close to the elevator escalator area for folks that use the paratransit. In terms of the access, we are looking at providing an access study, or we're managing an access study, and that's what we're looking at. We're looking at sidewalks and other improvements around the station area to see what those, see how we can get better access from the community to the station. So that study's underway, and as I mentioned earlier, we should have some more information on that early 2013. So again, we're looking at how those improvements might come out. And if you remember, back in June, Sound Transit Board provided about $5 million for some of that funding for those non-motorized improvements within that station area. And the city of Seattle also kicked in $5 million for that. So there's $10 million of funding out there for some improvements in the station area to provide access to the station. Now we just have to find out which ones of those kind of give the best bang for the buck in the station area.
So are you using the pedestrian master plan of all this guidance of what the city, all this process that you're talking about?
The city provided a list of projects in the station area that look at, and I believe they came from the city master plan, some of their other project improvements that they've had on the books. So they've got about a list of about $26 to $30 million worth of projects that they've asked us to look at, so that's what we're looking at.
And so you're saying metro buses are going to be far away from the actual main entrance of the station? Is that what you're trying to say?
We don't know yet. The King County Metro is still looking at some of their redoing the transit center. So we're still kind of talking about how the bus operations are going to work at this facility. They've looked at facilities on First Avenue, as well as when they're going to do their transit center, redo the transit center in their existing space.
I mean, I think the buses should be all around the block of the station and be able to be right there instead of crossing many streets or anything. And I feel Sound Transit and Metro do not have a good history on this issue. Very obvious of what happened at the Mount Baker Rainier in that area. And maybe, I don't know if you guys in Metro are looking at what other cities have done that have rail systems in this kind of interaction in that way.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we'll continue to talk. Yes, ma'am.
So how far would you say it is from, if the existing transit center just stays where it is, to that south entrance? How far would you say, about how far is that?
What
Would
do
you
you
say?
I'd say 200 feet.
Yeah, probably.
No, more than that, more than that.
Yeah.
Well, the station itself is 400 feet long,
Yeah.
so.
It's where the park and ride is right now,
Mhm.
so.
Yeah, it's about where the park and ride lot is now. So you're still going to get, I don't think it's any further walk than what folks are doing now to getting to the bus.
From the edge of the parking lot to the
Yeah.
present.
Right, so if you park, if you're, this is currently the parking lot right now. So if you park in this location, you still have quite a long walk to the transit center. It's not going to be any further than what you currently walk now.
I was just kind of curious how far that was. So you say like 200 feet?
Probably a little further than that. Yes, sir.
I apologize if this question's been answered somewhere else, but it's not appropriate for the time we got here. I paid no attention to the process until tonight, but I don't see anything in renderings reflecting solar trapping of energy. Is that part of the plan? And so it's already been discussed over the again, but it's not been discussed because others don't know as well. But a lot of rooftops, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm Deborah Ashland, Director of the Architecture and Art Program, and we are not planning any green power at this station. We do have a number of sustainability elements that are part of the station And you heard a little bit about the rain gardens in the question and answer phase. I can talk to you later about other things, but we are not proposing green power here.
What's the reason for not?
It's expensive. It's expensive, and the payback, the total cost of ownership on providing PVs is not there yet. So we're first.
Improvements in the solar technology we have today, look, we're out here.
Yeah, there could be, but right now we have a certain budget. So the other things, we choose to spend the money in other ways, on conservation methods, and then other areas to save resources on that. And I can talk to you later about that. We're looking into rainwater harvesting. We haven't talked about that here. We've got the rain garden area, looking at materials and things. So, but there is no green power that we're proposing at this station or actually at any of our stations currently.
Not to be obstinate, but couldn't some minor provisions be made to anticipate that at some point in time it might be a wonderful thing to do? I mean,
And we have done that at other stations. Again, I can talk to you about that later to get into the details of it, but just to answer your question specifically, there's no green power planned here.
On the elevated portion of the transit center there, or the light rail center, you've addressed everything except for possible earthquakes, and we do have earthquakes here, especially with all that glass, and you have a 50-foot pylons that you're all supporting the station on. So how are you addressing that?
Seismic issues are a major design consideration for all of it. And for example, the guideway oscillates at a different frequency than the station itself. The elevators are separate from the surrounding areas. Those are just a couple of areas where the seismic, the seismic considerations are a big deal. And they're the structural, I'm not the structural engineer, but we work with them and we accommodate the movement. So there is, so the seismic threat here is really well considered.
Yes, Chuck.
Yeah, just a quick question. How far out is your access study going? I mean, from the station, you're looking out how far?
We're looking right now at a 15-minute bike and a 15-minute walk. So that's
1 mile. 1 mile radius?
It's I don't know exact radius. I'd have to look at our map, but that's a good question. But right now it's just a 15-minute walk and a 15-minute bike. Yes.
Is that a series of 3 rain gardens
I believe, yeah.
Those are walkways across.
These are walkways here, and these are the rain gardens, correct, Eric?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. Any other questions? If not, feel free. Thank you all for coming, and feel free to walk around and check out the boards, and we're hanging out here. We can answer any more questions you may have. So again, thank you all for coming out.